You know this man. He is, of course, the Reverend Al Sharpton, the controversial activist who burst into the limelight when he advised the family of Tawana Brawley, a black teenager who falsely accused, as it turned out, some white men of kidnapping and raping her. Since then, he has seldom been out of the spotlight. Racial tensions appear to be growing in the city, indeed in the whole country. Reverend Sharpton, what would you do to alleviate those tensions?
Well, first of all, I would correct your introduction. We first became publicly known when we won the Howard Beach case, which happened 2 years before Tawana Brawley, and a grand jury made a report on Tawana Brawley. That never went to court, so your accusation of false is your opinion. It is not a documented fact.
None of that. Hey, this is about light, not heat. What, sir, would you do to relieve racial tensions in the city?
I would have a judicial system that gives equal protection under the law. I would have a system that if whites or blacks commit a crime, they pay the same no matter who does it and no matter who is the recipient of the crime. That's what I would do.
Sitting next to the Reverend Sharpton, this is Roy Innis. He is a controversial activist who has frequently taken positions dramatically opposed to those of Mr. Sharpton. Please, if we're going to have this peanut gallery booing, cheering stuff, we're not going to get much done in this hour.
Calm down, Mrs. Innis. Calm
down. Roy Innis, do you consider Reverend Sharpton to be part of the solution to racial problems in this town, in this nation, or part of the problem?
Al Sharpton can be part of whatever he wants to be. Al is that bright. And frankly, privately, he's that decent. Privately. Al can be part of a solution. But what's happening now is that we have public officials that are acquiescing to the worst rabble in the black and the white community.
Are you accusing him of being the worst rabble, sir?
I accuse him of allowing many of his followers to act like disorderly rabble.
Both men will have adequate, Both men will have adequate opportunity to air their views. Roy, look at Al. Al, look at Roy. They have in the past had their run-ins, broadcast and otherwise. I want you to pledge 60 minutes of peaceful discussion, guys.
I'll even lend him some hair.
Only Al's hairdresser knows for sure.
Blow. I thought it was
now, many consider race relations to be worse now than they have been in the United States for many years. Here in New York City, just one example, hate crimes are up 90% over just the last 4 years. How bad is the situation? Why is it so bad? What can be done about it? Well, aside from Reverend Sharpton and Mr. Innis on our panel to address these critical issues, we have C Vernon Mason. He's an attorney and equally controversial ally of Mr. Sharpton. Stephen Murphy, a highly visible attorney who played a pivotal and controversial role in defending white youths in 2 racially charged homicide cases. Collin Moore, an attorney whose client, a Haitian woman, was allegedly beaten by Korean shopkeepers in the borough of Brooklyn, setting off a racially charged boycott of that Korean-owned store. Next is Baek Cho, a reporter for the Korean Daily News. He will give us the opposite perspective on that boycott story. And last but not least, we have Harriet Bogart. She is New York director of the Anti-Defamation League, here to discuss whether or not that old, evil anti-Semitism is again raising its ugly head.
Thank you very much.
One of the most aggravating of the recent cases involves a boycott, that boycott by blacks of a Brooklyn grocery market owned by Koreans. Richard Izzo is the attorney for the shopkeepers. Fred McRae is the former high school teacher, he's on leave right now, who, with some of his students, many of them black, shopped in that Korean market in defiance of the boycott, a very controversial move that has made his life far more complicated. I said that the maximum sentences in the Bensonhurst case received by the 2 defendants helped soothe racial tension somewhat in this city. Do you agree, Vernon?
Geraldo, it was the first time in the history of New York State in which a white who was convicted of murder had ever been, first of all, convicted in the case of a person of color and given the maximum sentence. It was unprecedented in the history of New York.
Yeah. So, Al, you would agree that was a giant step toward soothing things.
I think that the quest for justice, and when you achieve measure of justice, certainly tension's cool. I think the problem has been that the media and those outside of the movement has tried to misinterpret a move for justice and change it into a little thing called harmony, when you can never have harmony without justice. They're offering the black community a peace pipe with gunpowder in it. If you really want peace, you give everybody equal shot at the bar of justice. Otherwise, you'll never have peace as long as I feel that no one will pay if I'm hurt, but I must pay if I hurt somebody.
But Roy Innis, did these two white defendants get an equal dose of justice when most other cases do not get the maximum at sentence? Didn't they get more justice than most defendants?
I'm very concerned about the Stephen Burnett's. Mrs. Burnett is here in this audience. I'm concerned about Mrs. Vaughn, Sean Vaughn's mother. These are young, talented black men who were murdered by blacks. And I'm afraid the signal is that unless you're murdered by whites, you cannot get a heavy sentence. I'm very concerned that the signal to a community where you have 100 blacks being killed per year by blacks, as against one in Bensonhurst or one in Howard Beach, the message is so corrupt and so perverted. That's my concern.
You would agree, Stephen Murphy?
Well, I would agree with one thing, that the sentences that Mr. Mondello received was a highly unusual sentence. I don't think there's ever been a defendant in the city of New York who received consecutive sentences on an E felony. He received four-year sentences running wild. That's consecutive to each other. Nobody's ever received that in the history of the city of New York. He was acquitted on the murder and the manslaughter charges, but yet at the same time he received a sentence tantamount to being convicted of manslaughter in the second degree. And what you do there, you abrogate the justice system by saying the jury acquits you of these charges, but we're going to sentence you as if you were convicted of them.
Nonsense.
Were they throwing you a bone?
No, they
Al?
wasn't throwing us a bone. If the judge gave him time that the statutes allowed him to give him, then don't cry now. I mean, the judge did not break the law. The judge decided to use what was available for him to use. And this is the first time it happened. I don't understand how Roy or Murphy can say that they're so concerned about blacks. 85% of people in jail is black. It is proven society will punish blacks. What has just been proven is that we may start punishing some whites.
Response?
How many black killers do you know that got that kind of sentence for killing blacks?
So,
let me see.
this is the first time you got a white killer.
Let me see.
This is the first time you got a white killer.
Let me see whether
Where have you been?
the murderer of Stephen Burnett, you know, he's going on trial soon. I want to see what kind of sentence he gets. Let me see if the murderer of Sean Vaughn in the South Bronx, I want to see what kind of sentence he gets. In fact, no one even knows about those murders.
If they're guilty, they should get the same thing
Isn't
that
that
the
really
others
the problem
got.
that nobody
If they're
knows
guilty,
about that?
Yeah.
That you need the racism issue into something in order for people to pay attention.
But no, that's
and then
not-
what happens?
Collin Moore.
I don't know where Stephen Murphy and Roy Innis have been for the last 20 years. The fact of the matter, just a moment. The fact of the matter, as Reverend Al says, over 85% of the people in jails are black.
That's right.
The people with the longest sentences in the history of this state are black people. The people with the lightest sentences are white. Now let's go back to Mondello. The fact of the matter is that
Mr. Murphy's client, Mondello,
was acquitted of murder and manslaughter, although there was overwhelming evidence that he was physically present at the scene, that he participated, and he took an activist role. The only reason why that predominantly white jury acquitted him of those charges is because he was white, and you know it.
Mr. Murphy.
Wait a second. The jury wasn't predominantly white. There were 3 blacks, there were 3 Hispanics on the jury, and 6 whites. We picked the jury. We picked the. Wait a second. We picked the jury. The system acquitted him of those charges. Are we now to try him again here? In other words, what they're saying is that if the courts come in and after a trial, the person is acquitted, we should ignore that. Because this is what they claim to be a racial thing. That's fascism at its worst.
Was he convicted, Murphy?
He wasn't convicted
Hold it.
of what
Excuse me,
you're
yes.
saying.
Mr.
Geraldo, Stephen Murphy knows, as well as everybody who's sitting here, as well as most people in the criminal justice system, that his client organized this mob. His client was guilty of murder. Other defendants who have not gone to trial yet gave confessions saying that his client was the organizer of this lynch mob. His client got away with murder, as Stephen Murphy has developed a skill in getting murderers away who kill black people in this city.
I think what we really need to look at what we really need to look at is why the value in a community like Bensonhurst is to keep your mouth shut and not say who did the killing. And not just Bensonhurst, but in every community. Why is it that being a stand-up guy is more important than being a human being?
Do you feel...
I automatically assume that that's the situation that occurred. It's automatically assumed that people saw this, that these people are guilty, and that they're not coming forward.
Amy, excuse me, gentlemen. Amy, let me ask you this question. Is it not reasonable to assume that with the acquittals on the more serious charges, the severe sentences received on these lesser charges were indeed were indeed to mitigate or alleviate racial tensions, that something else was going on in that courtroom, that racial tensions were deeply on the mind of the sentencing judge?
What's wrong with that?
And that is wrong with that. Justice. You know, it is foolish for blacks as a minority, as minorities, to be a sucker for a game where the passions of the mob determine justice.
I would personally like to see it.
That's the problem. That's a sucker's game.
Let's go to the Central Park case that you mentioned and look at the response of the press to the Central Park. Those guys were called mutants. They were called members of the lynch mob or whatnot.
What do you think?
Just a moment. Just a moment. Okay.
There are animals.
You just listen.
There are animals.
All right. The fact of the matter.
Gotta take a break. You're next. I want to go right to Baek Cho, who hasn't had a chance to speak of late.
I think we are all missing a point here. I came up here as a panelist, tried to solve something that has been solved in terms of racial issues. There are a lot of sayings in the media, a lot of black leaders, a lot of organizations are coming up to trying to solve the whole issue of racism, particularly in the case of Church Avenue incident. It's been dragging on for the last 6 months, close to 6 months, because it occurred sometime in January. And they mentioned some of the incidents that had occurred previously, 2 years ago, in Harlem and also in Bedford-Stuyvesant area. But every time we talk about these issues, we talk about the things in a very divided manner. And they believe, the blacks believe, that they are so right in saying the Koreans...
A small number.
Small number,
Yeah.
minority.
That's right.
That's what I learned.
Yeah.
And
You see,
learning,
most of us feel that this issue,
Why doesn't Baek Cho tell Korean merchants not to slap African women? Why don't they treat them with respect? That was the issue.
Wait, let me make one announcement.
one more thing.
Quickly.
And learning that the blacks are different among groups, and learning that a lot of Koreans are different makes sense. And that's the first thing in the step of making the solutions. Knowing that people are different and understanding that difference exists.
I don't think there's no disagreement there. All right, now Vernon, may I suggest that in the 4 minutes we have remaining, gentleman and lady, we take advantage of your experience and your intellect to suggest solutions to these tensions that seem so drawn like a bowstring.
No problem.
All right, solution. Now, quickly.
One is absolute honesty in discussing these things. Let me just continue for the minute. No.
Solution.
Wait. Honestly, I'm talking about solutions. One is that, okay, let me give you a solution. One is that we don't suppress information, especially in New York City. While all this was going on, there was a Korean merchant on 125th Street, May 20th, who cut an elderly black man on the hand. And let me tell you what happened, Geraldo. In spite of the fact that the district attorney filed a complaint and the police department investigated this, you know what the store owner said? He cut himself.
Okay? No.
Al, a solution.
Go ahead.
Solution is equal protection under the law. You must play the game by one set of rules. I admire the young man for lifting himself up. I just wish that the same compassion he had for the Koreans, he had for us when we were being called niggers and watermelons thrown at us in Bensonhurst. Don't have it on one side and not the other.
That the media be even-handed. Do not censor anybody. Don't censor Al, not even Sonny Carson. But allow equally eloquent and equally dramatic but opposing points of view to be heard in the black community.
Well, I think probably the most important thing is what's wrong with this picture? It's the same thing that's wrong with the picture at every one of these racial trials. There are no solutions being proposed. Nobody's listening to anyone. Everyone's yelling at each other. Everybody's on their own soapbox. Nobody's trying to help. All this ever does is polarize people. And we've got to stop arguing with each other and start trying to find a solution.
One of the problems is, Geraldo, that we live in segregated communities in this city. There are ethnic enclaves like Howard Beach, Bensonhurst, Canarsie, and so forth. We need to open up, and white people must not feel that they have any divine right to territory in this country.
Baek Cho?
I think we should all try to understand that we are all human beings who are trying to live a decent life. And that's the basic thing. And as much as you want to live that kind of life, you should try and work for it, not actually blame somebody else for your own troubles.
Oh, we work for it. We buy me first.
See this blue ribbon? This blue ribbon represents what the school...
Please.
It's my turn to speak.
Please.
This blue ribbon represents what Schools Chancellor Joe Hernandez has asked us all to do, which is to bring prejudice reduction to our children, to bring it into the schools, to bring a level of civility, to learn about all our cultural backgrounds. Our own A World of Difference program that the Anti-Defamation League supports brings this into the schools across the country. It's time to stop screaming, start listening, be role models for our children. Enough.
You know, I'm embarrassed. I really am. I'm embarrassed by my own show. I didn't think that I'd ever say that. I wanted this not to be a shouting match. I wanted us to maybe start on that long, rough road down the process of healing. I think it's possible. I think it's so necessary in this town, in this country. As I travel around, I see these problems. I think race, whether we admit it or not, is the biggest problem facing us. It's at the base of crime and homelessness and AIDS spreading now. I mean, we have to look to our leaders. We have to look to C Vernon Mason, a brilliant man, truly. Al Sharpton, who is so incredibly charismatic, as is his often stated opponent, Roy Innis. Stephen Murphy, a very effective counsel, has to advocate for us as he wants to. Collin, you too, to solve and to heal, and Baek Cho to stand up for your people and show how they fit into this beautiful mosaic, and Harriet to heal these awful, long-standing wounds of anti-Semitism. I want to do this again, but I want to do it where we stand together and suggest solutions. I don't want to be embarrassed by myself anymore. Thank you for being here. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.